Have you ever felt an animal looking at you like it knows exactly what's going on inside your heart? It's like, for a moment, the wall between human and beast vanishes, leaving just a pure, almost magical connection. Now, picture that connection saving a life. In the heart of a wildlife sanctuary, an ordinary day turned into a miracle the world will never forget. A boy, a gorilla, and a moment that defies everything we think we know about instinct and love. Want to know what made this story so special? Hold on to your heart, because what happened that day will leave you speechless. It was a warm morning, the scent of wet grass floating in the air, the distant chirp of birds echoing through the trails. Families strolled, kids laughed, and no one imagined that in just a few minutes fate would flip everything upside down. Leo, a little boy with sparkling eyes, was mesmerized by the animals. But in the blink of an eye, he found himself where no child should ever be, face to face with hungry lions. Can you believe that happened? And even more incredible, the one who came to his rescue wasn't a guard or an adult. It was a gorilla named Baraka. How did he know Leo needed help? Was it instinct, compassion, or something bigger, like a sign from the universe? If you love stories that show how much animals can teach us about being human, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss a single one. Because this isn't just about a rescue. It's about empathy, bonds that cross species, and lessons that stick with us forever. But how did it all start? How did a day so peaceful turn into a nightmare? Let's go back to the beginning and find out. The sun shone bright that morning, painting the dirt trails of the wildlife sanctuary golden. The air carried a faint eucalyptus scent, mixed with the soft hum of children's laughter and the buzz of bees dancing among the flowers. It was an ordinary day, you know. Families wandered, guides told stories, and the world seemed to spin in perfect harmony. In the middle of the crowd, Leo, a 5-year-old with curly brown hair and a smile that melted hearts, held his parents' hands, his eyes wide with wonder. Ever seen a kid like that, so enchanted it's like the whole world's a fairy tale? That's exactly how Leo was, pointing at every animal like it was the first he'd ever seen. But right then, no one imagined fate had other plans. Leo and his parents, Anna and Marcos, followed the group down a trail leading to the big cat's enclosures. The guide, with a gravelly voice full of passion, shared stories about lions rescued from circuses and hunters. Leo, of course, wasn't paying much attention to the words. He was hypnotized by the lions' paws, the way their tails swished, almost like the cat back home. "Look, Dad, he's winking at me," he said, giggling, pointing at a lion yawning lazily. Anna smiled, squeezing his little hand, but Marcos, distracted snapping photos, didn't notice Leo starting to slip away. You know that moment when everything feels fine, but something in the air shifts, like the universe is holding its breath? That's exactly what it was like. The trail curved gently, and the group stopped near a wooden fence separating visitors from the lion enclosure. The structure was sturdy, sure, but there was a small gap, almost invisible where the wood met the ground. No one paid it any mind. Who'd think a kid so tiny could wander so far? But Leo, with his boundless curiosity, spotted something shiny on the ground. Maybe a colorful stone, maybe just a glint of sunlight. He let go of his mom's hand for a second, crouched down, and started crawling toward the gap. The sound of twigs snapping under his knees was so faint no one noticed. Anna turned to answer a question from the guide, and Marcos kept clicking away on his phone. In a flash, Leo was on the other side of the fence, alone, way too close to the lions. Picture the scene for a moment. A kid so small he barely reaches your knee, just a few feet from 5 lions that until then seemed calm. Your heart sinks just thinking about it, right? Leo, in his innocence, didn't even sense the danger. He still held the little stone he'd found, smiling like he'd uncovered a treasure. But on the other side of the fence, one of the lions lifted its head, ears perked, its gaze locked on the boy. What would happen next? How could a morning so perfect turn into a nightmare in seconds? Silence dropped like a stone over the sanctuary. Where laughter and the group's chatter once echoed, now only the sharp whistle of wind through tall trees could be heard. The smell of dry earth hung heavy, as if nature itself knew something was wrong. Leo, crouched on the wrong side of the fence, still clutched his shiny stone, oblivious to the danger around him. But the lions? They weren't oblivious. 5 pairs of golden eyes fixed on the boy, and one, the biggest, with a mane that seemed to swallow the sunlight, took a slow step, its tail whipping the air. Ever felt that chill down your spine when you know something awful's about to happen? That's exactly what Anna felt when she turned and didn't see her son. "Leo!" Her scream tore through the air, so sharp it sent nearby birds scattering in panic. Marcos dropped his phone, the device hitting the dirt with a thud, and ran to the fence. The guide, face pale as wax, tried to stay calm, but his voice shook as he yelled for the group to step back. On the other side of the barrier, Leo finally looked up. The stone slipped from his hand and his eyes met the lion's as it approached. He froze. You know that moment when time seems to stretch, like every second's an eternity. Leo, his little heart racing, took a step back, tripped over an exposed root and fell flat on his back in the grass. The impact knocked the breath out of him, and a soft whimper escaped his lips. It was enough to make the lion take another step. The crowd beyond the fence was in chaos. Some screamed, others cried, and one man tried to climb the barrier, only to be pulled back by the guide. Anna, tears streaming down her face, pounded the wood as if she could break it with her hands. "My son! Someone do something!" Marcos, on his knees, muttered what sounded like a prayer, his eyes glued to Leo. And the lions. They weren't in a rush. The second largest, a female with old scars on her snout, began to circle, keeping Leo in the center of a deadly semicircle. It felt like a cruel game, as if they were deciding what to do with this tiny intruder. But deep down, ever thought about how nature can be so beautiful and so terrifying at the same time? As panic took hold, something shifted. A deep, almost thunderous sound rumbled from a nearby enclosure. It was a growl, low and commanding, that made even the lions pause. Heads turned, and curious eyes searched for the source of that roar. Who could change the course of this moment? What was about to happen in that wild corner of the world would leave everyone's jaws on the floor. The growl echoed like thunder trapped in the earth's throat, making the ground seem to tremble under the crowd's feet. The air now carried a damp edge, as if an invisible storm was brewing, and the smell of crushed leaves rose from the nearby enclosure. Every eye, human and feline, turned to the source of that sound. It was Baraka, a 17-year-old silverback gorilla, with shoulders broad as a mountain and eyes that seemed to hold a lifetime of stories. He stood at the edge of his enclosure, his massive hands gripping the fence separating him from the lions. Ever seen an animal that seems to understand the weight of a moment? That's exactly what Baraka was like, and in that instant, he wasn't just a gorilla. It was as if the universe had picked him to change everything. While the lions kept Leo cornered, Baraka didn't waste a second. With an agility that defied his size, he climbed the fence of his enclosure, each move precise, like he'd rehearsed. His whole life. The crowd held its breath. Anna, her face wet with tears, stopped screaming, her eyes wide. "What's he doing?" Marcos muttered, almost voiceless. The guide, still trying to keep control, whispered something about Baraka being the leader of his group, known for protecting the young ones. But this was different. This was instinct mixed with something deeper, something that made your heart want to believe in miracles. The silverback landed on the other side with a thud that kicked up a cloud of dust. The lions, for the first time, seemed to hesitate, stepping back. Baraka didn't look at the cats. His eyes were locked on Leo, who still trembled on the ground, his curly brown hair plastered to his sweaty forehead. The gorilla moved forward, slow but determined, each step resonating like a drum in the chests of those watching. One lion snarled, but Baraka answered with a low growl, so powerful the cat lowered its head. It was like he was saying, "This one's mine." You know when you feel an animal speaking to your soul? That's what Baraka seemed to do, speaking to the whole world. He stopped a few feet from Leo, tilted his head, and something in his gaze softened. A gentleness no one expected. But could he reach the boy before the lions reacted? Close your eyes for a second and imagine a gorilla, a child, and 5 lions, all caught in a moment that could change everything. The tension in the air was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Baraka was so close, but danger still lurked. How would he protect Leo? And what did that gesture mean, not just for that moment, but for everything we think we know about animals? The air felt still, heavy with the weight of 1,000 stares. The muffled sound of branches swaying in the breeze mixed with the faint crunch of grass under Baraka's massive feet. The silverback was just steps from Leo, his brown eyes fixed on the boy, who shivered on the ground, his knees scraped and face smudged with dirt. The crowd, on the other side of the fence, held their breath, as if any sound could shatter that fragile moment. Ever felt a connection with an animal so strong it's like they see your soul? That's what Baraka and Leo seemed to share, right? Then, something beyond species, something that made your heart believe in magic. Baraka leaned forward, slow, almost reverent, and stretched a furry arm toward Leo. The boy, eyes wide, didn't flinch. Maybe it was innocence, maybe Instinct 27 instinct, but he raised his tiny hand, his trembling fingers brushing the gorilla's calloused palm. The crowd let out a collective gasp, and Anna, clinging to the fence, let out a sob. "He's protecting, son," she whispered, as if she needed to say it out loud to believe it. But then the unexpected happened. One of the lions, the scarred female, took a step forward, her low growl rumbling like distant thunder. Baraka didn't hesitate. With a firm but gentle move, he pulled Leo behind him, his massive body a living shield. Can you imagine courage? Like that? A gorilla facing lions for a child he'd never met. The moment was so intense it felt like it was painted in slow motion. Baraka kept the lions at bay with a gaze that blended authority and calm, while Leo clung to the gorilla's arm as if he knew he was safe there. Marcos, on the other side, muttered something that sounded like a mix of prayer and promise, his eyes shining with hope. The guide, radio in hand, was already calling for backup, but everyone knew. In that second, the real hero was Baraka. Who'd have thought an animal could teach so much about compassion? He didn't just protect Leo. He showed the world that empathy knows no boundaries. Stop for a moment and feel this. A gorilla and a child, bound by an invisible thread of trust. But the story didn't end there. The lions still prowled and time was running out. The sanctuary team was on its way. But would they get there before the cats lost patience? And how? Would Baraka keep Leo safe until then? The sound of heavy boots crunching gravel sliced through the tension like a blade. The air, now thick with the metallic tang of adrenaline, hummed with urgent voices and the crackle of radios. Baraka still held Leo, his massive frame a wall between the boy and the lions who paced restlessly, ears alert. The crowd beyond the fence swung between sighs of hope and cries of fear, while Anna and Marcos clung to each other, eyes locked on their son. Ever been in a moment where every second feels like it's choosing between life and death? That's exactly where everyone was, hanging on a thread of hope, waiting for a miracle. The emergency team, led by Ranger Emil, swept in like an organized storm. Emil, a man with sun-weathered skin and eyes that had seen it all, carried a calm that steadied even the wildest hearts. He raised a hand, signaling the team to take positions as he sized up the scene. Baraka, solid as a rock, Leo gripping his arm, and the lions, wary but still dangerous. "Nobody moves till I say," he said, his voice low but steady as the ground beneath him. The plan was simple but risky. Distract the lions with meat tossed through a side opening, unlock a safety gate, and pull Leo from Baraka's arms. But honestly, can you imagine the challenge? One wrong move and it could all fall apart. The team moved with clockwork precision. 2 rangers threw the bait, and the lions, drawn by the scent, shifted their focus for a moment. Emil, a tranquilizer, gun in hand as a precaution, edged toward the gate. Baraka, as if sensing the shift in the air, turned his head to the ranger. Their eyes met, and for a split second it was like they struck a silent deal. Anyone with a pet knows how they seem to read you, right? Baraka, with a gentleness that drew gasps from the crowd, lifted Leo in both arms and handed him to Emil, who held him tight. The boy, scared but unharmed, clung to the ranger, while Anna screamed in relief from the other side of the fence. In minutes, Leo was back with his parents, wrapped in a hug that felt like it'd never end. Baraka, now alone, returned to his enclosure, with the same calm he'd shown, as if he knew his job was done. Take a second and think about it. A gorilla who risked everything for a child, and a team that turned the impossible into reality. But what would this moment mean for the world? How could a story so small echo so far? The sanctuary caught its breath, but the ripple of that day didn't stop there. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange, and the air carried the cool touch of a breeze that seemed to wash away the afternoon's weight. The crackle of the ranger's radio still hummed in the background, blending with the relieved voices of the crowd, while Leo, safe in Anna's arms, buried his face in her shoulder. Baraka, back in his enclosure, sat quietly, chewing a leaf as if nothing had happened. But come on, you think a story like that would stay tucked away in the sanctuary's trees? Because what came next was like a wave, carrying Leo and Baraka's names to every corner of the globe. The news spread faster than wildfire. A shaky video shot by a visitor captured the exact moment Baraka handed Leo to Emil. Within hours, it was all over the internet, with headlines shouting, "Gorilla saves, child from lions, and the miracle of animal empathy." People in far-off cities from Tokyo to Sao Paulo watched with tears in their eyes. Group chats blew up with messages. "Did you see this? It's unreal." Even scientists, the kind who live buried in books, stopped to debate what Baraka did. Was it instinct, intelligence, or something more, like proof animals feel like we do? You know that feeling when a story makes you rethink everything? That's what the whole world was feeling. As the buzz grew, the sanctuary became a symbol. Visitors flocked in droves, eager to see Baraka, the unlikely hero. Animal protection groups saw record donations, and schools started teaching the story of Leo and Baraka in lessons about respecting nature. Anna and Marcos, still shaken, gave a tearful interview, thanking the gorilla who saved their son. "He looked at Leo like he was one of us," Anna said, her voice breaking. "And Baraka?" He went on with his routine, oblivious to the fame, thumping his chest or playing with the other gorillas, as if to say, "I just did what I had to." Who hasn't wished to be as wise as an animal like that, acting from the heart without asking for anything back? Take a deep breath for a second and think. A child, a gorilla, and a moment that united the world. But what does this story really teach us? How does it change the way we see animals and ourselves? The answer was just starting to take shape, and it was going to stay with us for a long time. Night fell over the sanctuary, wrapping everything in a silence that felt like an embrace. Stars twinkled in the sky, and the faint scent of dew mingled with the distant trickle of a stream running over stones. In the gorilla enclosure, Baraka rested, lying on his side, his chest rising and falling with the calm of someone who'd done their part. Leo, now home, slept clutching a stuffed animal, while Anna and Marcos, sitting in the living room, still tried to process what they'd been through. But that story, so small and so huge, left marks that stretched far beyond that day. Ever stopped to think what an animal can teach us about being human? Because Baraka, with one single act, gave a lesson the world won't forget. What happened in that sanctuary was more than a rescue. It was a reminder that nature, with all its strength and mystery, holds lessons we sometimes overlook. Baraka showed that empathy isn't just for humans. It pulses in a gorilla's eyes, in the way he protected a boy he'd never seen. He taught us about instinct, sure, but also about choice. The choice to care, to risk, to connect. And that's not all. Leo and Baraka's stories shed light on animals' intelligence. Their sensitivity so deep it makes you wonder, who's really in charge here? You know that moment when you look at an animal and feel like they get more than they let on. Baraka was that mirror, reflecting the best of us. This story also sent a clear message: respect. Respect for wild places, for the creatures we share the planet with. The sanctuary strengthened its fences, guides doubled down on safety, and visitors started moving with more care. But above all, people began to listen more. To the sounds of the forest, the animals' gazes, the beats of their own hearts. Baraka became a symbol of coexistence, of how humans and animals can meet in a space of mutual trust. And look, if a gorilla can teach us this much, imagine what else is out there waiting to be discovered in nature. Close your eyes for a moment and feel the weight of it. A boy saved, a gorilla hero, and a world that learned to see differently. But how does this story keep inspiring us? And what does it say about the future we want to build with animals? The answers are closer than we think. The sanctuary slept under a sky studded with stars, but Leo and Baraka's story still shines, like a campfire warming our hearts. The scent of wet earth lingers in the air, and the soft croak of frogs seems to whisper that life goes on, always finding a way to surprise. What started as an ordinary day became a lesson that swept the world. Sometimes the greatest teachers don't speak, but act with their hearts. Baraka, with his wise eyes and gentle ways, showed us that empathy and connection know no boundaries, not species, not of time. Ever felt an animal teach you something no book could? That's the magic Baraka brought. This story isn't just about a rescue. It's about respect, about listening to nature with an open heart, about recognizing how much animals have to offer. Baraka reminded us that coexistence is more than sharing space. It's building trust, protecting each other. And if a gorilla can change a child's fate, imagine what we can do when we choose to act with compassion. So how about carrying this lesson with you? Next time you cross paths with an animal, look into its eyes. Who knows what story it's waiting to tell? And have you ever had an animal change your life? Share it with us in the comments. We love hearing how these connections touch you. If this story warmed your heart, the next video YouTube suggests will move you even more. Don't miss it. Hit that like, subscribe, and let's keep exploring what animals have to teach us. Because in the end, instinct or love, what matters is the bond that ties us together.